testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and the nothing but the truth, so help you God.
It took you a minute to give a name, but you ended up giving it.
I have a name for you.
Go ahead.
Glenn Gaffney, CIA.
Former head of science and technology of the CIA, we know is one of the gatekeepers because he stopped the material transfer. It was his office and directly from him.
After that missile strike, you see these three, let's call them objects, debris, pop off. What's interesting to me is in infrared, they have an identical signature. I had a bit of an exchange with folks who follow this closely. Nobody's been able to find anything that replicates this as an infrared artifact.
When we found out about this, and the night before, when I'm looking at this footage, what I don't see is the over 5 minutes that this was tracked after impact, and those objects continue along with the original UAP.
5 UAP incidents occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base. You know, behind the scenes and what these people are actually going through and how their lives are being destroyed.
My name is Alexandro Wiggins. I'm an active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist, Senior Chief Petty Officer. Yeah, to answer your question, George, yeah, it does happen often off the coast of California and San Diego specifically, where the majority of our ships are at.
You know, the name Matthew Brown has now been prominent in 2 UFO hearings in front of Congress in a row.
I see Matthew Brown in the audience. He courageously stepped forward and was as a witness. I encourage everybody to look and seek his testimony.
But I think it's time people, hear directly from him. So thanks for joining us, Matthew Brown. Great to have you on Weaponized again.
Jeremy, George, great to be here. It's a sunny day, and it's been a strange but rewarding week. Thanks for having me on.
This is Weaponized. I'm George Knapp, coming to you from Las Vegas. Jeremy Corbell, my friend and colleague in parts unknown. Jeremy, how you doing?
Great, man. What an adventure we had in D.C. A lot of work getting there, huh?
Yeah. Have you recuperated?
No.
Me neither. Me neither. I don't ever want to leave my house again. I mean, that was a great trip and everything, but I had enough. I don't think people realize how much work went into it, and not to pat you too hard on the back, but you work with that committee staff for a long time in trying to set this up. I mean, it's a tall order no matter who was going to testify. And I tried to avoid, I don't know about you, but I tried to avoid all social media as soon as the names were announced, and all kinds of grief was dumped on people's heads. I guess the bigger surprise was Sean Kirkpatrick, who entered the fray. We can talk about that later, but you really did a lot of work to try to help them out. And I know ideally, the world wants hands-on whistleblowers, people who've worked on the craft, people who've moved the bodies. Yeah, that's not easy to get, as this committee knows. And they've tried to offer a lot of protections. It was sort of the point of this hearing is whistleblowers, witnesses, have a really hard time coming forward because they face genuine peril, correct?
Yeah, and look, it was a huge success in that it was an excellent group of people testifying, yourself included, which was so cool. And, I now I can tell everybody kind of how that went down. And I will address this, that it's going to take a lot for people to understand how this goes down, in that I nominated a lot of people, got Congress in touch with a lot of people. Some people were fully authorized. They went through the whole process, but were then unable to testify for a variety of reasons. When you get in a public hearing, unless you want to hear somebody be like in a closed session, in a classified session, in a skiff, over and over and over, you have to work with people who that they can say certain things. Obviously, Dylan had more he could say, but not in a public setting. So I will report to you that some people did testify behind closed doors, but I'm always fighting against that. I want people to be able to talk openly. I know there was a lot of pressure, like who's going to talk, and I didn't listen to anybody. I just fucking went and tried to get the best people possible to give the big picture. And I think everybody's really happy with it, is what I hear word on the wash, which is great. We had solid witnesses, and it was such a cool thing. It was an achievement to have that happen. And a lot of people couldn't testify publicly, but that's okay. That's part of this process and what this hearing was about.
I know that I got a lot of, why are you testifying? You're not a whistleblower. You're not hands-on. And as you know, I mean, I've been in conversation, you and I in conversation with these committee members for a long time, and have been asked about this before. And I never lobbied for this because it feels like a little bit of an odd position for a journalist swearing under oath to be there testifying. But I only did it because they needed me sort of to tie some things together. These witnesses were great. And, you know, I heard complaints that, well, I've heard these guys before. It's nothing new. Look, testifying under oath before Congress, before the whole world, all those TV cameras, is different from telling somebody something on a podcast. It's just different. I know for me, it felt like an out-of-body experience. You know, I'm not unused to being involved in public forums like that. That's a whole different level. And it felt really out of body. It felt like some kind of a scripted scenario that the aliens created for me or something. But I was really impressed by the committee, by the questions they asked, by their staff members who work with you to make this happen. It was tough. I mean, right up until like 2 days before this thing happened, they were still saying no to one of our witnesses, right? Our witnesses, their witnesses.
Yeah. You know, the world's witnesses. Absolutely. And, you know, just because I can talk about it freely now, man, every hearing, there were multiple members that nominated you. That I didn't nominate you. I didn't have to. They were nominating you every time. And this time it stuck, which was so great because I think that having you there as somebody big picture could allow to create that space for some of the witnesses to be heard. And you're right. It came down to last minute. And as you said to me, when I told you the final decision, I fought tooth and nail to allow and have Dylan Borland be able to testify, as well as Matthew Brown. And, you know, it was literally 6 days before he got the confirmation. And there was an exchange you and I are aware of on a text. And I was like, you're making a big mistake. The public needs to hear from an actual quote unquote whistleblower who went to the ICIG, who went through the process to multiple intelligence agencies. And they chose Dylan, to their credit. Representative Luna, Representative Burlison, they fought to get him, to allow him to testify. There were a number of people, you know, we brought that you didn't hear from, and you're gonna hear from them in time. One will be coming sooner. But look, man, it was an excellent hearing. I haven't gone back and looked at it, and it is like an out-of-body experience. I didn't hear everything because at the time I'm literally in real time dealing, you know, with the questions being asked and trying to figure out what's going on. But it was an epic success for the UFO issue. Again, in 50 years, we didn't have hearings. Now we've had our third or fourth or something. Amazing.
I know for me, I mean, someday the story can be told about the hilarity that ensued in my preparations, because when I finally realized, okay, it's going to happen this time, holy crap, what am I going to say? I start looking around. You think my room looks bad normally? I mean, I started looking for example for the Russian documents, and, you know, those boxes back there, the labels are sometimes misleading in that I keep things in other places, you know, and just for security purposes so they don't walk off. I searched for 3 days for some of that Russian stuff and finally found it in a very out of the way place and had to text it to him. And then the writing the thing, you know, I know this is totally unlike me to write 50 minutes worth of stuff for a 5-minute window, but I did, and then rewrote it again. You had me stuck in a hotel room. You can't leave until you finish this. I was writing it. I wrote it 6 different times, and I was rewriting it in the car, in the Uber on the way to the hearing. I have to tell you, my scrawl is pretty bad, pretty illegible, and I'm sitting there in front of Congress and looking at this. What the hell did I write here? And what language is that? It's like Sanskrit or ancient Babylonian or something. I couldn't read it, but we'll save that for some comedy roast at some point.
Yeah, you should, you know, it was a lot of people were ready, but they didn't get that final confirmation. It was chaos. So I'm so glad it worked out the way it did. I'm so proud of all of you. And we're going to be hearing, you know, from the people that testified today. And I think that's exciting, is to kind of get their reactions. I'm very proud of the way that everybody buttoned up, got it together. And despite the kind of fear of being so vulnerable publicly, you know, we forget that when you talk about this stuff. I mean, you get lots of slings and arrows, and I'm so happy everybody did it great. Now, there was another thing that happened at the hearing that there's some background to, and I think we'll get to that in the end of this episode. I'll give you the background, but there was a new piece of alleged UAP footage.
One that
you
we've
and I
talked about. One that we've talked about on this show before.
We have, yeah, I was looking for like where we talked about it because I went 2 years ago. I'm on with Joe Rogan and I'm telling him about shoot downs and, oh, did I get shit for that? And I was talking about in Syria and all this stuff. But there was another time when I do remember mentioning it, that there was a recent shoot down because we found out about it, you know, probably just days after it happened. It was a big deal in the IC, this video. We see other countries firing on these. Russia, Syria. We know it's not their assets. So the question is, whose are these?
So when you say firing at these, so
Hellfire missiles.
Right.
So we're sending a plane up to take a look. Yeah, maybe get a better look or even some imagery, but not to engage, meaning shoot it down, shoot a Sidewinder at it or something.
Right. I would, you know, I'm not going to be able to say that's never happened, but I have not seen them engaged, with weapons.
Well, it recently happened, and we became aware of one. More details on that, I think we'll report on. And what happened was the missile, quote, bounced off. And so they're trying to figure that out. But, what does that imply? Like a field around it? I don't know. Now again, we know that it's designated UAP. It still is, actually. I just found out. I did some research after the hearing. But, obtaining and releasing it wasn't in the cards for us. And then, holy cow, Congress itself, retrieved or was able to have this video and put it out. And you and I look at each other and we're like, we know this video. I mean, the day before, we're like, we know this video. We'll tell you a little bit what we know about it. And I'll expand on that. But I think first impressions. We have a good friend, Marik, who always really digs into this stuff. And I know it's first impressions and, it's kind of the shiny object, this video. And I want to talk about the hearing with who it was and what they said. But I think it deserves we bring in Marik just to give us his first impressions of the video before we expand upon it, right?
Excellent idea. Marik Von Rennenkampff, who's worked for the Defense Department, worked for the State Department, a friend of our podcast program, a smart guy who doesn't jump the gun. He's very thoughtful in analyzing videos and incidents and case history. So is he here?
What's up, Marik?
How's it going, guys? Good to be back with you guys.
So you were watching, did you watch the whole thing live as it was happening?
Every minute. It was incredible. It was one hell of a hearing, guys. Congratulations. Yes.
What's your take overall on the quality of the witnesses and what was discussed?
Absolutely superb. I really appreciated the fact that we had video presented in addition to the incredibly high quality witnesses. Truly, truly fascinating testimony. And I think, I looked at Eli Crane, a former Navy SEAL, as a congressman who had questions for the witnesses. And what really struck me is he literally said, I used to think growing up, I thought the UFO story was all kooky. Listening to you guys, respected service members, and watching the video, I am now a, quote, believer. That is just about a direct quote from a former Navy SEAL and a current congressman. So let's hope that is, the impression that many other folks who saw the hearing came away with as well.
Jeremy, you have talked about that video in the past in very limited terms. The night before the hearing, Representative Burlison, who's got balls, share some information, Jeremy, and shows it, and you knew it was coming, but just seeing it, I had never seen it before until it was live, and kaboom,
Yeah, want to talk to you about it, Marik. I know this is preliminary, and we don't know. We weren't there, but they did release a piece of footage that is allegedly a Hellfire missile that's bouncing off of what they're calling a UAP. The little bit of background I can give is, George and I were aware of it. We've made statements about shoot downs before. Somewhere I kind of slipped it in. I remember saying something about this footage because it was reported to us like right after it happened. I just couldn't believe that the world was going to see it. So just the day before the hearing, they alerted us to this. We were able to authenticate that it is a real DoD video. It is labeled UAP. There's some other details we know about it that I've never said publicly, and I think today we'll talk about it. But words are words. We got a piece of video. I'm amazed Congress could show this. Now, you've always looked at stuff. I know preliminary assessment, but is this interesting? Is this video interesting?
So I did my usual roller coaster of analysis. At first glance, it was, wow, this is incredible. Holy smokes, this is fascinating. I think, most people when they first see it have that first reaction too. Then I looked a little closer. I looked at some initial feedback from former fighter pilots like Ryan Graves and Chris Lato, all both weighed in on it. And I think Chris Lato thinks he's fairly convinced it's a balloon. Ryan Graves says, hey, it's could very well be prosaic. And then I started looking at the actual numbers, and I really got in close into the details. And there are a few things about that video that are truly, truly bizarre. Now, I want to, again, you mentioned it, Jeremy, I want to be very clear. This is all extremely preliminary. The Pentagon could come out tomorrow and say, we know this is a balloon. Here's the full video. Here's the full data. I just need to caveat everything that I'm about to say with the fact that this could still be debunked. And we have seen very compelling video and footage being debunked in the past. That said, I'd be happy to kind of jump through or run through a few of the things that stood out to me, if that's helpful for you guys. So maybe just so we're all playing kind of off of the same sheet of music. I want to quickly kind of go over what at a high level what people are seeing and on the screen. So right here we have the display. The very top, this is one of the more important numbers. The -40 means this camera is looking to the left. The minus means we're looking to the left of the drone. This is an MQ-9 Reaper drone. And the bottom right, we have a series of numbers down here. This 103, that's the direction the camera is pointing. It's looking 103 degrees. So it's basically east, southeast. This number is the slant range to this target right here. Actually, right now it's actually still centered on the ocean, but that becomes clear later when the laser is fired. So we're looking at 7.3 nautical miles, and this down here is a 6.1. That is 6 miles horizontal distance. So if you were not up high and you were just looking horizontally from the plane to the target, it's a 6 nautical mile distance. This right here indicates the laser is firing, and I'll just set the scene. This drone, we know from the math, I won't go into it, but we know it's at about 24,500 feet, give or take. We know this object is at about 12,000 feet, give or take. There is a lot of parallax, so that background is moving really quickly. That does not mean the object is moving very quickly. In fact, it's the opposite. And the other thing that really stood out to me is when you really actually get in close. I know people love to crap on UFO videos. Oh, they're blurry and they're pixelated. Well, believe it or not, for folks like me and the other folks that have really spent a lot of time looking at infrared footage, this is a very, very sharply resolved, well-defined infrared image. It even has what's called edge sharpening, this kind of black outline along the object. So we have a very good indication of what we're looking at here. This is an oblong object. And interestingly enough, this is in white hot. So objects that are hotter are going to appear whiter. We know that, for example, because the missile is light colored when it travels through the screen. And what I'm seeing here is this object is all white. So if you go back, the individual waves of the ocean are actually really well defined. That means this thing is screaming hot. It is hot, 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 certainly compared to the ocean. And we'll get into that in a second. So that's a lot at a high level. Just to dive into what I found really interesting is there are 3 little, let's say, objects, pieces, debris that pop off of this object after the missile strikes it, the Hellfire missile. And I'll just say quickly, that missile is designed primarily for air to ground. But it was used in an air-to-air engagement. This is an extremely precise missile. This is the one that they use to put, missiles in through windows. It takes out individual drivers in cars, so it's extremely precise. After that missile strike, you see these 3, let's call them objects, debris, pop off. What's interesting to me is in infrared, they have an identical signature. I had a bit of an exchange with folks who follow this closely. Nobody's been able to find anything that replicates this as an infrared artifact. So, without evidence proving that this is an artifact, the fact that they are identical is fascinating because it's very, very unlikely that 3 pieces of debris, of junk that gets knocked off of any object, whether that's a balloon or whatnot, to be identical. Pretty low odds that you have 3 basically identical looking objects.
Also unlikely that 3 identical objects would travel along with the balloon.
Correct. Yes, you're absolutely right, George. And I'll just quickly go back to the leading theories. I think some folks, the skeptical community has I think largely come around to this being a balloon. I think generally folks who have looked at infrared imagery can rule out drones. If you look at, for example, drones in infrared imagery, very clearly defined wings. Even if you look at footage that's much grainier and from further away, you can still make out wings, control surfaces, tails. So the fact that it is a oblong shape generally tells us that is the shape that we're looking at. And this is what really I found fascinating, and that is when the missile strikes and you slow it down, these 3 objects, it looks like they emerge in succession. They weren't blasted off with the force of the impact. They come out oddly enough, one by one. It is a very bizarre kind of emergence. To my eye, it's almost like they were inside the object and came out. One theory is that this is debris from the payload of a balloon, but if that were the case, gravity and drag would pull these things immediately down, and this flapping envelope would be high above these objects. But as you watch the whole video sequence, you see these objects, and certainly 1 or 2 of them, even at the very, very end, 50 seconds, at the very end of that video, 30 seconds post-strike, they're still very close to this object. And this is where drag comes in, right? If this is a large chunk of metal, it would already have, been miles, or certainly well below that flapping balloon envelope.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting. The object rotates, and it just doesn't rotate at random. It begins rotating basically the moment after the drone hits it with a laser, a designating laser, so that missile knows exactly where to go. And you can see it in that sped up footage, the zoomed in footage. It really zips around, and then bizarrely it appears to stop rotating just an instant before the missile hits.
So a lot to discuss. Again, very, very preliminary. I'll say one more thing. I find it highly suspicious that our friend Mick West has not put this into his 3D recreation software yet. And I have a hunch now why. I've run this, and this is, again, preliminary. This could be overcome by any number of events in the next few days. But at first glance, when you do all the math, you put in all the data, all the laser range finding data, and I want to stress that laser range finder is ultra precise, because that's what they use literally to take out individual drivers of cars, right? It is super, super precise. And if you put all that data I use several different AI models, you get this object traveling at a speed of about 40 knots, give or take. That is well above wind speed for the entire day in the entire region of where this was shot. That's assuming we know the date and the location. So that was a rapid fire, quick overview, but much more to explore with this footage. And as you dive in, it gets more and more interesting.
I'm really grateful for your analysis. I do have previous insight about this, and there's some things I'd like to just mention. It's going to frustrate everybody, but here's a fact for you, which is that when we found out about this, and the night before, when I'm looking at this footage, what I don't see is the over 5 minutes that this was tracked after impact, and those objects continue along with the original UAP. And I know that's frustrating. I'm just reporting the news. Don't be mad at me. I don't know whoever gave it to Congress. They gave them the main part. But as we all know, that extra minutes, like with the Go Fast, the extra minutes of that footage would be powerful just to have. But I am reporting to you for sure that there is extended footage, and I wish it was public as well. But a couple other things from the initial reporting to me and George about this.
Can you quickly, Jeremy, just quickly on that point of if there is extended footage, there is. I can tell you in the data that we have so far, there is something to suggest that, because I think most geometric estimates now have the Reaper, the drone, taking a right turn after impact, almost as if it were going to, hey, why is it still flying? Why does it still exist? Why is this object still on the planet? Why am I still seeing this object? Almost as if the operator was curious. So there's a very good chance that the data certainly indicates or will back up the fact that the allegation that there's longer footage.
Yeah, it's not an allegation. I can confirm to you there is. The problem is it's not public, and that's nothing I can do about that. But the original stuff that came at me and George was why immediately we were alerted after this was because no explosion. It bounced off. These are the exact words people kind of identified to us. It is labeled UAP. It didn't descend, neither did the tag-alongs. They did not descend after for a large amount of time. I really hope that now this video is public, people can fight to get that, Congress can fight to get that footage declassified and out to the public. Arrow can go get it and put out the whole video. If you got nothing to worry about and you don't want people misidentifying this, then go ahead and put out the other 5+ minutes of footage after. I think we should all fight for that. And I said something on X about that there is other footage. It's on CIPRANet. And people can go get that. But the other things I want to contribute to this, other than it didn't descend after impact, and this is where it gets really weird. A couple things. First of all, somebody was saying this is like an RX-9, a flying Ginsu, so it wouldn't explode. It's like Ninja missile. Is supposed to have these blades. That's used for soft targets, meaning like people. And it's a very expensive weapon. It would be very bizarre if they were using that at the part in the world over the ocean or over a body of water like they were here. That's an extreme precision kill weapon. It's very different. It's used in like high profile missions, as you can see in history. But here's one of the weirdest things. One of the weirdest things is when it was reported to me and George, there was this word that was attached to it within the file and a briefing, and it was marsupial. So I had to go look that up. And it turns out, when you look it up, marsupials, things that like keep other living things in pouches, right? And so it was so funny to me, and I didn't know what to make of it for months and months and months. But then I started thinking, this really is reminiscent of a good friend of my, his footage, this guy named Jim Martin, and he was filming in ultraviolet and IR through a camera off the coast of California, and there's this weird anamorphous blob that's dropping out these orbs. I mean, just dropping these orbs out. So I'll play this here just as like a sort of symbolic why they might use the word marsupial. Think of like a kangaroo with a pouch and objects inside of it. So that's why I said online, I think you're onto something, Marik. Now, I can't prove that, but I'm reporting to you what came to me and George associated with this footage prior to its public release. So that's something of note. There have been so many weird dismissive theories of this without proper investigation. I think it was even Avi Loeb was suggesting that it was the object itself that it got hit was a Houthi Samad drone. Have you ever seen a photo of one of these? They're not an anamorphous blob, and because of your thermal research, Marik, you would see the huge wings, the X on the tail, the long length of this if it was hitting some known drone. So what you're seeing is representative of the shape of what's there. So there's a lot of questions with this footage. This will be an ongoing thing, but I can tell you that even as of today, it is a UAP designated by the DoD to this day, even after the footage came out. If that changes, if we find out about it, George and I will report that. But thank you so much for putting your neck out there.
Yeah, before he leaves. So why is a balloon white hot? What balloon is white hot? Who made the decision to go ahead and fire a Hellfire missile at this white hot balloon? It was a balloon. And did it, in fact, what we see with our eyes, it looks like that Hellfire, which cost like, what, $100,000 to shoot at a balloon?
Yes.
you made the decision to spend that to take out a balloon, and then it keeps on going. Is it, a titanium balloon? Is it a Led Zeppelin? Maybe it's a Led Zeppelin,
Right. You're absolutely right, George. I'll just say, and the balloon theory, the more you think about it, everything that I've seen, a Mach 1 missile, Mach 1.3, so, speed of sound plus, even if it doesn't detonate, it's going to cause some major, major damage, certainly to Mylar and, for other, the Chinese spy balloon, very quickly, I'll just I know we got to run, but very briefly, it's very clear what happened to that balloon. It shrunk because at altitude at 12,000 feet, which is where this object was, the air pressure is such that in general, for any normal balloon, unless this is some really bizarre balloon that's oblong and yada, 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 it would instantaneously deflate. It's catastrophic depressurization. Now the white hot, the fact that it is so hot in infrared could be because of solar heating. I want to be fair to that. Go Fast, the other video, is very, very cold compared to the ocean, but that was at night. So anyway, I want to just, quickly just reiterate, this is bizarre. And I think if the Pentagon, if Arrow, given the millions, truly the millions and millions of views that this footage has racked up just on social media, let alone on major news networks, I would think that the Pentagon would have a debunk or some kind of statement ready to go if A, it was aware of the incident, or B, had already found an explanation for it, because this is spread far and wide thanks to Congressman Burlison and certainly to you guys for your hard work on this.
It's so awesome. Thank you so much. Look, it's a developing story. We all want the perfect footage, and all we can do is work with what we got. But thanks for doing the analysis, and thanks for just coming on today, man. Man, that's awesome. Marik is always open-minded. He fights the fight. He goes for it. And it's so cool to see him analyzing the footage. I think we're going to learn more as we go. I think we should pressure to get the full footage, which I'm, again, clearly saying there's about at least 5 minutes more after that shows no descent of those 3 marsupials. So let's see. But in the meantime, I really wanted to shift the focus from the video onto the people that testified. It took a lot for them to do it. Some people got very short notice. When I had nominated our friend Jeff, I knew that he would bring his A game. I knew he'd get his homework in on time, unlike George Knapp. And I knew that he would throw down and talk about his really important observations as a military police officer during the time of some incursions at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So without further ado, you kicked ass, my friend. Jeff, great to have you here.
My name is Jeff Nuccetelli. I'm a former military police officer with 16 years of active duty service in the U.S. Air Force. Thanks, man. Hi, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jeff, going into this, were you worried what the public reaction might be, what the downside might be for you? It's one thing to speak about it on a podcast or an interview with like us. Testifying in front of Congress is a big deal.
Yeah, I was worried about that about 2 years ago. And over the last year, I've stopped worrying about that. I'm all in now. It was a life-changing experience, man. I'm still in the afterglow. Being together with everyone, I mean, that was powerful. And knowing how serious it is, behind the scenes and what these people are actually going through and how their lives are being destroyed in real time. And that's ongoing. I mean, that's really what we were all there for, to let the public know what happens if you come out and try to speak the truth. They will destroy your lives and your reputation and your family and your health. So, yeah, man, it was powerful.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, so you got to kind of really behind the scenes get to meet with some of the people who testified and also who didn't testify. So you're kind of talking from a place of knowledge that most people don't have, which is what people went through in order to get to the point where they're testifying in front of Congress. But just for you, I loved your intro, and I loved how you broke everything down. Why did you think this was so important? Like, first of all, do you have other people from your case that are now pumped and amped to come forward, at least behind closed doors, to Congress? Did it change anything?
It changed everything, man. A flood of information is coming in right now. people that were stationed at Vandenberg in that time frame are reaching out. They're letting me know that they've got additional information. So we're collecting all that right now. And I think this hearing has lit a fire in the military and veteran community. And we know that there's lots of people like us out there that have remained silent for various reasons. And now people are willing to step forward and join the fight. So a lot is happening behind the scenes. So yeah, I talked to Dylan for a while today, and, we're all feeling good, and, just trying to stay focused now, figure out, okay, what are the next steps? We have to keep the momentum going. We need to gather our forces. We need resources. We need lawyers, and we need pressure. So yeah.
I know I felt really good about being up there with you guys because I needed the emotional support going into it. But I knew the three of you were rock solid in the experiences that you were about to share with them. What did you think about the level of interest by the members of Congress and how even-handed they were in the questions that they asked and how they reacted to you?
Yeah, that is really encouraging. Everyone knows that right now everything is politicized, and these lines are being drawn in the sand. And over all three hearings, this is the one topic where it's bipartisan for real. And I think the reason for that is a lot of these congressmen and women have seen some of these photos behind the scene. They've seen the videos that we're talking about, and they know what's really out there. And once you've seen it, there's no letting go, right? So these congressmen are engaged. They know it's important. They know we are not lying. And they know that someone is covering up the truth. So, their questions were on point. It was really encouraging. And I don't remember his name at the moment, but that one veteran, I think he was a Navy SEAL congressman. He said right there, he believes us now. He didn't used to believe in this topic, but now he does. So we are making progress. We've got some good people in Congress, advocating for us and paying attention, and the momentum will just keep growing. So I'm encouraged. I can't believe this has happened. And George, you were the calming factor for all of us, and it was perfect that you kind of went in the middle, and everyone I talked to afterward was like, thank God George was in that hearing. You were like just this blanket of security we all had, having you there, and your
I can assure you that I was not calm.
None of us were. It was tense, but yeah, I'm so happy. You were there too, George. It meant a lot.
You know what UFO world is like, Jeff. You've been around the topic for a while, and it could get pretty nasty. And it was pretty nasty to you witnesses, the three of you guys, before you ever said a word in front of Congress. And there are some things that Congress has to do. Not everyone spends all their time working on this topic. And, they've only had 3 hearings, since after 50 years of having none. It seemed to me you guys were establishing a foundation. A, this is real. Credible witnesses that served in the armed forces have seen these things. And B, they paid a price for it in coming forward, that there are risks to speaking about what you've seen and risks to coming forward to something like this. Is that basically your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it was critical. I looked at all, the Twitter traffic and what was in the news leading up to it. And I knew they were wrong, so I wasn't worried about it. I'm like, we're going to come out there, and we've all brought receipts. We're not just telling stories despite what people want to say. I've given direct official records of some of these events to Congress, to Aero, and the FBI. So there's no doubt that these events happened. And the same thing with every case. There is behind the scenes, there is a preponderance of evidence supporting all of our testimony. And that's important. It's not just us telling wild stories. And none of these situations, especially with Alex and I, they did not happen in isolation. I mean, Alex was on a ship, and Everyone that needed to know on that ship knew about those UFOs. And the same case with me. You know, we had 80 people on duty during these events. They played out in real time over the radio. They were logged. You know, we lived through. So anybody that's out there saying, you know, there's nothing to this, they're not paying attention.
Right. They're not paying attention. They're trying to distract from it. Look, that was part of the nomination process. Why I called you is because you have the receipts. Everybody that came up have receipts. Now, not all of them could present the receipts publicly, but at the same time, I'm specifically talking about Dylan, but you know, you having that and providing that, and it's a big deal just to go through that process, to go through the entire vetting process from Congress. I mean, getting you there, I really appreciate it that you jumped in and said you do it. Now, it does bother me that there are quotes that hit the air, you know, from Dr. Kirkpatrick and also Tim Phillips, the former head of Arrow, prior to the hearing. It's like they're trying to demean you, call you a wacko. We've never interviewed any of these witnesses, is what Phillips said. And I was sitting there laughing when I saw that quote, because you did extensive interviews with Arrow. You broke it down. You gave them who to speak with. This is way prior to even being nominated for the hearing. So the fact they're lying or being disingenuous, or how can they not remember that? Of course they remember that. And that's same with Dylan as well. He gave a full breakdown to Arrow. And in fact, they classified some of what he testified to them. So, you know, how does that make you feel when you stand up because Congress asks you, the American public asks you, and you go to testify, and you've got these former heads of Arrow saying, oh, we've never heard this story. It was never reported to us. We never did intake. What did you think when that came out like a week before the hearing, when they're trying to diminish you before you've even spoken?
I thought, good. Keep running your mouth. That's because I'm going to step outside and smash your teeth in this hearing because you're lying. You know, I've got the receipts from Arrow. They've been coordinating with me, so they could go out and tell any tales they want. But when we step out onto that schoolyard, you're in trouble, right? That's how I looked at it. Run your mouth, and it gave me motivation. You know, it gave me motivation, and especially, you know, I think they're playing a dangerous game. Because if you look at the Wall Street Journal article, basically what they're saying is, and this is coming, I'm assuming Arrow gave the Wall Street Journal evidence. And the picture they painted was, the UFOs aren't real. What we were really doing is using experimental weapons on these people, on Bob Salas and the security forces that were on topside. And it's like, if that's true, then you're wrong, and we need to go to court. So I encourage Arrow to keep coming out with these stories about shooting microwave weapons into our heads and trying to blow up nuclear weapons in the middle of our country. Because if that's their official story, then we need to start investigating that. Maybe that's the next hearing, right? Show us your evidence. And what did you do to these service members? So I encourage the leadership or prior leadership to Arrow to continue doing what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Hope you keep us in the loop. If anything bad happens, we'll raise some hell about it if we can. Jeremy, anything else?
No, I think that's good, man. But Jeff, I hope that you get loud out there. I know you're going to be starting a podcast, and we'll make sure to let people know about that. I hope that you have enticed a bunch of people to come to you about your base and what was going on there, and that you expand this story. Then the hearing and your testimony will have been worth it in the fact that people will come to you and expand the story. You will document it and get it out to the world. So I look forward to hearing what you learn because you testified and how you can share that with the world. Just thank you so much, man.
Yeah. And thank both of you guys. None of us would have been in that hearing without you, Jeremy, and you, George. People don't understand what you're doing behind the scenes and how much work and effort and resources you put into this. But, you know, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys. You know, you're the reason that hearing really happened. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that. Let's keep pushing together. Hey, Alex, I know you're on location. Thanks for jumping in with us. Hopefully you got a stable internet connection, but man, it was great to have you testify at the hearings.
My name is Alexandro Wiggins. I'm an active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist, Senior Chief Petty Officer. Absolutely. Thank you and George for having me back here on Weaponized. Yeah, It was great going out there testifying, and had an awesome time doing that, and thankful for everyone involved.
Alex, any feedback from your fellow crew members? Have you been back on the ship yet? Do you have groupies? Is there any reaction from the people who know you to now your superstar status after testifying before Congress?
Great question, George. I have had a few folks from the USS Jackson reach out to me, and it was all positive. They all said, congratulations and good job and things of that nature. Yeah, it's all been positive feedback from everyone, and even a few friends of mine now they call me a celebrity, and they're like, "Hey, what's up? Look out for the celebrity." But yeah, it's all in good fun. Absolutely.
It is all in good fun, but I gotta thank you. I don't think people know that you had to go through security reviews. You had to get the DoD and the Navy to authorize officially that you're going to be talking in a public setting in front of Congress. I mean, it wasn't just a very simple process because you're active duty. And, I think it puts you above a little bit. It protects you a little bit more now. You're just talking about something that you experienced and saw. So thank you for taking that risk, and thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, Jeremy. If the opportunity is now open more than ever for service members, sailors to open up and share what they witnessed, I'm happy to be the person to have opened it. I'm here to serve, but I'm also here to ensure that there's open transparency for, reporting things like this that we see. Everyone that I talk to, they're thankful, and they are also curious as to what's in the skies. And now they hope that this kind of bridges that gap between service members being able to speak about it and knowing what's out there.
Well, the Navy has clearly led the way. I mean, for the last couple of years, they were revising standards, encouraging their personnel to go ahead. You see something, say something. I think Jay Stratton, ex-Navy guy who sort of helped pave the way for that. But kudos to the Navy they gave you no opposition whatsoever at any step of this as you're asking for, is it okay to testify, right?
Yeah, no opposition. It's the complete opposite. The Navy reached out and asked me, is there anything you need help with? Do you need us to have a conversation with your chain of command at your specific, command? I said, absolutely. I wanted to wrap in my chain of command so they knew, what I was involved with outside of my typical job. And they were all supportive, not just the Navy itself, but my current command. So I thank the Navy itself, my current command, for being helpful on what I wanted to help, the nation with, essentially, with service members being able to speak out. So, yeah.
And I think also your testimony, look, I called probably 20 people that were direct witnesses to events at sea in the Navy, and really not a lot of people wanted to put their head above the parapet and do it. But I think you doing so, because you have said, and many others have said, that it is not an uncommon occurrence to designate something a UAP or an unknown, but it just gets buried and people don't talk about it. So if it is such a common experience, I think this opens the floodgates for people to come forward and to report, even unofficially, but just to report on the fact that they are seeing UAP and that it's more common than people think. I think you broke that mold.
Yeah, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be the service member, active duty, to break that and open the door, because maybe after watching the video that was released, service members can relate and say, you know what? I've seen something similar. I didn't know that this was something that I could report to someone. And now they kind of have an example of what they can do. And at least the first step on, how can I report this, and kind of let everybody know, we're also seeing things out there. Yeah.
Well, elaborate on that. You're all seeing stuff out there. I mean, it happens a lot, especially in that particular area off the Southern California coast.
Yeah. So I would say the majority of the time that we have conversations about seeing things in the sky, it's kind of just pushed to the side. So for example, if someone were to be on watch on the bridge or on the flight deck of one of the ships out here, there's a potential that they may have seen something. And because we're focused on the mission, because we're focused on, our watch standing, our circadian rhythm, make sure we get the sleep that we get, et cetera, we're probably going to let a lot of those things fall to the wayside. So, yeah, to answer your question, George, yeah, it does happen often off the coast of California and San Diego specifically, where the majority of our ships are at. We see these things and, you can, after enough times, tell the difference between, a shooting star or a satellite. We know the difference. We see the difference. And, specific to California, I see it often. I've been on 15 total deployments in my 23, almost 24 years. And I've never seen the amount of, anomalous aircraft in the air more often than in Southern California. I've been around the world, but I mostly see them in Southern California. I haven't actually seen them anywhere else. I'm not an East Coast sailor, so I haven't been stationed on the East Coast, but on the West Coast and San Diego, for sure, you see them in the skies very often.
And it's your job to differentiate, right? To know what's in the sky, what's flying around the ships or the battle group that you're with, to be able to identify commercial craft or military craft. That's what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my job. I'm an ASTAC. And so having to mitigate when I have helo missions, what different aircraft are out there as far as friendlies or not friendlies, that's my job. I've been doing that for almost 2 decades, right? So, understanding atmospherics and understanding different things in the air to keep the mission safe, to keep our pilots safe, that's pinnacle, right? Safety is pinnacle. So if there's something out there that I or other sailors that are in the position that I am cannot identify, that's concerning on a totally different level, right? On the safety level. But it does make you scratch your head and wonder, what is it that I'm experiencing? I have publications that help me classify all the aircraft that are out there, but I can't classify this one or these type that we're constantly seeing. So, yeah, it is kind of concerning on that home front, but it also makes you scratch your head and say, why is it that we're mainly seeing them specifically in San Diego off the coast?
I do want to give a shout out to the first active Navy commander that came on Weaponized was in really our first episode where we had a guest, and it was Commander John Gutierrez from the Navy, aka Guts. And I know that when you were testifying and you were announced you were testifying, there was an influx of support from you. And then when you were testifying, while people were underway, they were watching your testimony on those Navy ships in real time about the operational area that you testified to. So it's just like such a cool moment that you're getting so much support. I know you're speaking for yourself, but I'm also proud of how the Navy has supported people like you, telling it like it is about UAP and how we need to have better reporting on this.
Yeah, I'm very humble, I believe. People tell me sometimes, and I'm thankful that, it's kind of like your home team rooting you on, because I know there are pilots out there, officers, that are out there. And, myself being senior enlisted, we do have to think about our careers. And if there's really, a gray area of wanting to just speak about what you've witnessed in the skies, you do want to prioritize your career because, yes, your career is tied to your family. It's tied to your future. And so, of course, you're going to prioritize that, right? And so I definitely thank, Commander Gutierrez and everyone else that was watching around the Navy and, kind of rooting on like, hey, you know what, that's one of us. That's one of us that are out there stepping up and testifying about what they witnessed. So thank you for everyone that watched and everyone who didn't that still does support. Thank you.
One other question from me, and then Jeremy, you can take it where you want. Can you talk about the deference that you got from members of Congress, the kinds of questions they asked, the treatments that you and the other witnesses received? I mean, it seemed like they were pretty polite and bipartisan, unlike almost any other topic. They were fair and they were genuinely interested, at least to me, watching the process.
Yeah, George, I agree. They seemed focused and interested on the topic. They didn't seem as if they were, had a secondary agenda in the way in which they were asking us questions. So definitely appreciate that from Congress because it shows that they were more focused on the agenda of understanding what is it that we don't understand about UAPs, UFOs. More focused on that than, any level of political, left or right leaning questions.
Alex, thank you so much for coming again on Weaponized and for testifying. And I don't want it to be lost on people. I want, people to really see you were testifying based on footage. There was footage out there that George Knapp and I obtained. We got connected through Admiral Tim Gaudet. And I want people to go look at that footage again, because what you're talking about, they can actually see in that thermal footage from the USS Jackson.
So, yeah, an easy, summary of what people are seeing when they see that video is it picks up where there's a UAP that previous to the video surfaced the water. I witnessed with my own eyes. And where they start seeing is they see the UAP being zoomed in on our Sapphire system on board USS Jackson, and you see it making, very abnormal movements in the air. And at some point when the operator, the CSM operator of the Sapphire, zooms out, then you see two other objects, a total of four, because you can't see the fourth one on the video, but you see all four of those objects. We don't have a technology, at least that we know of publicly, that can do that. So, when the video ends, what happens afterwards is all four of the actual UAPs themselves, they take off like near simultaneous, and they just take off into the distance. We've never seen something I've never witnessed as far as like that level of four of them getting together and leaving at the same time.
You are a Las Vegas guy. You grew up here. You have family here. Las Vegas, as we know, is a UFO town. When you come back for a visit, there might have to be a parade or something.
Yeah, you know what? I can't wait to visit you and come back home to hometown. And love Las Vegas, so definitely look forward to doing that.
It takes such great courage to come forward, and we acknowledge that, and I hope that you see that we are taking that seriously. And so very thankful for what you're doing today. I'm also very thankful for previous witnesses that have come forward. I see Matthew Brown in the audience. He courageously stepped forward and was as a witness. I encourage everybody to look and seek his testimony.
The name Matthew Brown has now been prominent in two UFO hearings in front of Congress in a row. The last previous hearing, there was a lot of discussion about some documentation that Matthew had been responsible for bringing forward. The Immaculate Constellation, that's a name that will stick in people's mind. And of course, this hearing, I think, Jeremy, you and I expected Matt to be called as a witness. I think a lot of the people did as well. And were undoubtedly disappointed that he was not a witness. But he was there and part of the proceeding and part of the gang and giving moral and emotional support to the guys who were there. And we anticipate, right, that someday he's going to be called before these guys.
Absolutely. Matthew Brown went through the entire vetting process, with Congress. He was poised to, officially under oath testify to the degree that he can to the public. And, because of politics and dynamics, he wasn't officially called to testify this time, but I really am firm that the public needs to hear directly under oath at Congress from Matthew Brown. And I think at a future hearing, it'll be like his third time being mentioned because they gave him a great shout out at the hearing. But I think for right now, people are wondering, how is Matthew Brown? What is his life like after he came forward with us on Weaponized? And he's doing some writing. So I've been seeing some of the writing he's been doing. But I think it's time people, hear directly from him. So thanks for joining us, Matthew Brown. Great to have you on Weaponized again.
Jeremy, George, great to be here. It's a sunny day, and it's been a strange but rewarding week. Thanks for having me on.
What was your thoughts of the hearing, how it went, how the witnesses were treated, how the overall experience affected you?
I think starting off with how the witnesses were treated, both in front of the camera and behind it, it was very respectful, very earnest, serious questions from members and their staff. I think the interest is there, and the recognition is also there that this is not going away, and that the American people deserve to have their voice heard.
What's your life been like since your fantabulous debut on Weaponized?
I would say pretty uncertain. It's been a summer of waiting and working and waiting and working and seeing things almost come about, then fall apart. And all that matters, though, is at the end here, we got September 9th with some really stellar witnesses who brought just incredible information. And I really couldn't be happier with how that turned out, given what was arrayed against that team.
Yeah, we so just so the audience knows, Matt, you were ready, you were waiting to testify, and we were kind of like dealing with this together. Are you going to be called? And there were so many uncertain things. You went through the entire process, like you were vetted and ready to testify. And I want people to understand, you put your life on hold, waiting for the call of our nation if they want to hear you testify publicly. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting your life on hold and doing that. Ultimately, it was great to see you or have you there sitting right there behind, and you got this great shout out. So I don't know where it goes from here is going to be interesting, but did you have some specific takeaways? Because I know somebody we're not talking about yet is Dylan Borland, and there's a reason we're holding that for a little bit later. But Dylan is a great friend of yours. You have some great photos of you together. You've kind of been in the trenches together. So were there any takeaways from seeing and being there at the hearing that you'd like to talk about?
I think, well, this is the first hearing I've ever attended in person. So I don't know what the vibe was like in the room at the other two, but this one, it felt intense, but there did also feel like a lot of camaraderie, not just with the witnesses, but with the commentators, the spectators, and the journalists who also showed up to attend. And just briefly on the subject of me testifying, not testifying, look, it's, as I've heard so many times, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We are all in this together. I have plenty to say. I've also said a lot already. I don't need to be there. Who you heard from on September 9th, really, wow, fantastic job from those guys. All credit to them.
Looked like a bonding experience with you and the other witnesses, that either though you didn't testify at this hearing, that you were all in the same boat.
Yeah, Jeff and Alexandro both became familiar with through your work here on Weaponized. And as you said, Dylan and I have, we can reveal, we've had a friendship over the past few years that's been quite frankly, one of the few relationships that has survived this ordeal, and if anything, has grown stronger. And I think we supported each other a lot. And if that's any indication of how Dylan works with other whistleblowers, I feel very confident that people out there feel assured to see him on the stand.
You've been through this really tumultuous time, in part because you came forward with Jeremy and I, and, you knew there were consequences for stepping forward and saying what you did. Any second thoughts that maybe you shouldn't have done that? I mean, your life is kind of in limbo, is it not?
No second thoughts. It had to be done. Certainly wasn't anything I was prepared for, but how do you prepare for something like that? Yeah, I have no regrets about doing something good.
So, Matt, moving forward, I know that you have a Substack, and I'm really grateful that you started writing there. And I know people want to support you. And I think the way to support you is to read what it is that you've said, but also what you're going to say in your Substack. So we'll put something here so they can have a direct link to reading what it is that you're writing. But what was why did you decide to do a Substack? How can people support you? And I'm glad you did it, but what's next for Matthew Brown here?
Yeah, that's a great way to get my opinions. The first little 3-part series here, I wrote, as it was going back and forth whether I testify or not, just to kind of expand on the story and build some attention for the night. Hopefully that helped a bit. What comes next there, I want to share what I can to help sort of do disclosure by the people, get people prepared just in the background of certain topics that, some familiarity will really help them digest what's coming down the pipe. So check me out there. As for support, this is what I'm doing right now. But the future is very much open. So, I thank everyone for who's reading right now.
I have one other question about whistleblowers and witnesses coming forward. You knew there were risks in sharing the information that you did with the world, and the other guys too, the other guys who testified at this hearing. In particular, Dylan, your friend for some time. He had made a comment to the members of Congress about other difficulties that whistleblowers face in terms of employment. And the committee, this task force, wants to provide some kind of protections for people, make it easier for them to come forward and not face retribution in their workplace. But the reality for you, for Dylan, you'll never work in that stuff again. I don't know how do they provide for whistleblowers and witnesses like you when so much that happens is essentially extra legal. Break-ins to your house, tapping your phones, intimidating you and the people around you, and making it impossible for you to ever work again in the profession that you've trained for, the clearances that you had. I don't know how you solve that. Do you?
So at least with this topic of UAP, aside from having assurances that in certain rooms with certain people I can say anything, there's no protections, no safety nets, no help with transitioning. It's very much a one-way relationship, at least right now. So if things can change there, not just for me or for the people who've already spoken, but especially for the people who are still stuck in these programs or in the family members who are associated with people in these programs, we're looking at a very large problem here, not just in terms of the classification involved, but yes, the social transition and keeping people alive and thriving. And it touches on something just briefly here that I think a lot of America is currently experiencing. We are going through a massive disruption in our economy through technological changes, and we seem to be just going by the seat of our pants without any plan to help people who are never going to work in the careers that they have trained their whole lives for, on a much larger scale than just the UAP issue. Absolutely.
We talk a lot about, reprisals against people, extra legal things. And for a number of reasons, we've kept that really private. I know that with Dylan Borland, we're going to get into that in the weeks to come, like what's occurred. And it's hard to link these events necessarily to the whistleblowing that's going on. But I want to give people a tangible physical example of something that has occurred and has occurred to you. Are you comfortable explaining? I know there's a police report and all that, but just, the kind of thing that you experienced when you were going through the whistleblowing process, such as a break into your home. Will you just tell us about that?
Yeah, and I think a good place to start is there's just a brief history lesson. The term gaslighting comes from the practice of intelligence. It's driving people insane by messing with their lives in a way that can never be proven and makes the person even question if something is acting against them. So in situations like that, like the Stasi is most infamous in our recent history for practicing this, it's almost worse for the victim of such tactics to go public. Experiences that I've had like that, there's so many that I know I can never prove, and almost even more that I don't know what they were. But I guess one of the first and the worst was having our home broken into while my wife and I were there sleeping with our animals. Just a normal weeknight. It was very shocking to slowly wake up and realize over the course of the morning what had happened. And yeah, knowing that these people were in my home and could have done anything they wanted to at any time. You remember being touched like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an official, this is, over the years of knowing you, this is like, there's an official police report about this. And some of this happened to a lot of people like Lazar back in the day, these strange break-ins to the home. As you said, it's almost worse to report it publicly because that's kind of the tactics at hand. But one of the things that, if it's okay to talk about, I mean, they laid out family identifications as if they were photographing it and smashed something of great value, emotional value to you. It was not a robbery. It was a message. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I don't want to, cross any lines of sort of privacy here, but yes, personal documents and personal identification documents were left out in a way to indicate that not only were they in the house long enough to gather such things, but clearly, this isn't a robbery. As for personal effects, it was a very clear message. I had, at the time, the remains of my grandfather with us, and those were removed from the house and left next to the garbage.
So this was a more of emotional, personal attack than it was some sort of robbery. And the fact you were in the home and unaware of this with your pups, that this was happening. And I know you reported through local law enforcement. I know David Grush also had a very gnarly experience right before he went into a skiff that involved a firearm pointed at him. That's public now, I think. So it's these kinds of things that I just wanted to shed light on the actual things when we talk about reprisals and we talk about this kind of pressure on you guys as you're moving forward to testify. So Matt, any final thoughts about, kind of the path forward and what's going on before we let you go today?
Yeah, I think overall the reaction from the community and from the public has been great. There's a lot of interest, a lot of support. Big names are covering the hearing. Of course, there's some incentive there with some a spicy video for everyone to pour over. But while this is going on, just sort of the meta commentary for those involved, I think this is a really good moment to reflect and realize that we've taken a step forward. It's taken decades of work from people I'll never meet and a lot of people will never hear about. So let's set aside the egos, let's set aside our profit incentives, and let's focus on what needs to be done, which is bringing truth to the public. And for those of us who are Americans, restoring our Constitution.
Thanks, Matt. Always good to talk to you. Great to see you in D.C. and hope to see you soon again.
Be well, George. Be well, Jeremy.
So, George, that's all of our friends, the people that were able to testify, and Matt Brown, who wasn't. But, just got a question for you. You kind of touched on it briefly, but I know you brought a lot of the Russian documents that have not been public before, and I know you brought them for congressional record, and I'm sure they're going to put those on record. But for you, what was one of the best parts for you being able to do this? And thanks for doing it, man.
Well, a couple things. One is, the camaraderie, those other guys, including Matt, who didn't testify, but part of the group. They're amazing. They lifted each other up. That was mutual support. And I felt it as well, because it is daunting. It is a daunting thing to appear before Congress, not the same as doing a UFO podcast interview. You're in front of Congress. You're in front of the world. You're under oath. You're testifying and being asked questions by people who really know how to ask questions. And the whole world is watching, all those cameras and other people. And it's a lot of pressure. I'm just proud to be part of that group and how it happened. As you know, I did not want to testify. I was not enthusiastic about it. I would do it. I said if I filled some gap form or something, and I guess I did. And the reaction from the public, and we get a lot of interaction with the public, and most of it is negative, Jeremy, as you know. But I've seen this stuff come in, and even people who were skeptical that it was worth listening to, which we hear that pretty much every day. Gosh, I quit. I'm not listening to this anymore unless the guy who's working on the screwdriver on the flying saucer is going to testify, or they wheel in the dead, charred alien body into the hearing room. I'm not paying attention. And I have a one-word answer for people like that: bye. Because what those guys did is establish a foundation for how Congress can move along. This is real. There are consequences for people who step forward, and now they know it. I was also astonished by the members of the committee themselves. You got Representative Luna, who is no shrinking violet, and Representative Crockett, the minority leader on that panel, and they got along, and everybody else got along. And the questions were serious, and they were well thought out. The staff members who prepared members did a lot of great work. Everybody was ready to go. Everyone took it seriously, and there was none of the partisan sniping that you usually get no matter what the congressional hearing is about. So I was really encouraged by that. If UFOs, UAP is the one issue that can bridge the partisan divide, so much for it. The other thing, I don't want to beat a dead horse, and this particular horse is not only dead, but its bleached bones are down at the bottom of the canyon rotting in the sun somewhere. It's Kirkpatrick. This guy was the head of Arrow. This organization was created. He's the first director. And before the hearing happens, as soon as the witnesses are announced, he gets a media minion, and they go on this tirade. It was just so tiny and so small for a guy who was head of this program to make these kind of remarks. It was these insults, his nickname he gives the committee, Luna and the Lunatics. That would have been a real gutbuster out by the tetherball apparatus in junior high school. But for a grown man, a scientist who supposedly is impartial, unbiased, who's heading up this very important investigation, to come out with that stuff, it's so demeaning and it just shows that guy was not the right guy for that job. And the guy that followed him wasn't right. And I feel sorry for the people at Arrow, Dr. Kozlowski, who everything we have heard about him is legit. He's legitimately interested in getting to the bottom of this mystery and doing a fair investigation. Now he has to live with the stench that emanates from that building of Arrow that was left by his predecessors. And I feel for him. It's a shame. There should be an honest investigation that is outside of the control of the Pentagon of somehow. Witnesses need to be protected. Congress needs to be armed with subpoenas. And there are some really good witnesses who you and I can recommend that they go after next. People like, I'll tell you what, I'll read something. I did not get to enter into the congressional record, but I think I probably will. And it's from Jay Stratton. I was going to add this to the end of my presentation, and I still might if I have a couple of days. Jay Stratton was critical to the creation of OSAP, the largest UFO investigation ever funded by the U.S. government. He was critical to ATIP, the smaller program that came after. He was the first director of the UAP task force. Actually, he was a director of the task force before it was even officially created by Congress. He set in motion a great structure for getting to the bottom of this. He had trusted people all over the government, and they were trying to honestly investigate this stuff. And you'll recall that UAP task force, at the end, they had 144 cases they had boiled it down to, and 143 of those were unexplained. And they had done their homework and trying to figure this out, and they could not crack that mystery. And yet Arrow comes in, suddenly, oh yeah, it's all explained, everything's explained. I mean, it stinks, and it's a shame, because we need a fair investigation. That guy and his predecessor clearly were not the right people for it, and this is why I thought Jay Stratton was the right person, and I wish he was still in there. He said, and this is a comment to us, Jeremy, as an architect of the DIA's UAP program and later the UAP task force, I can tell you this: the deepest problem isn't what we don't know, it's what's been deliberately hidden. If Congress doesn't assert oversight now, the same people who buried this for 80 years will bury it for another 80. He's right. I can't thank them enough for inviting me. I appreciate all the input that people have sent to me since this thing. It's going to take me months to read all this stuff because I'm hiding here in my house until it dies down.
Yeah, just a couple last comments here. I mean, there should be an official rejection, and Arrow should, the current head of Arrow should disavow the comments from the former directors. It is so sinister. What you just read, from Jay Stratton, it's not what we don't know, it's what we're hiding. You have somebody saying that in that position of power. Man, that is so great to hear that from him, even though it's a private communication, to us rather than a public thing. But you in the hearing, you named names, you named locations. It took you a minute to give a name, but you ended up giving it. And it was Glenn Gaffney, former head of science and technology of the CIA, we know is one of the gatekeepers because he stopped the material transfer. It was his office and directly from him that stopped the material transfer of these technologies of unknown origin to the OSAP program. So it was great that you actually threw down. Everybody was, scared, not scared, but everybody was like thinking, should I name names? You actually did. So if they can subpoena their asses, if Congress can get oversight, maybe just, Jay Stratton, maybe Dr. Lakatsky, who's admitted that we have obtained a UAP and have breached the hull. That's a step forward. So I think, as we move forward with these hearings, even if they're friendly subpoenas, if they enact their subpoena capability through the House, then I think we're going to make even more progress. But I want to thank you for saying a name in the hearing, for identifying locations. I know that you were given by sources the ability to do so. And so I really appreciate that you did that. The task force did a great job. And I just want to say, Representative Luna kicked ass for the American public. Representative Burchett, the funniest guy in Congress, man. He was great when he came up there and was talking. He is a true ally for UAP transparency. And as of more recently, Representative Burlison has done a great job. So I'm really grateful for what happened. I'm grateful for what you did, George, even though it is daunting and you have more homework to do and to write more stuff up. Last thing I want to hit is who we missed out on here today. And there's a reason we did. And that was Dylan Borland. And so you kind of get the vibe from this audio recording that Dylan had more to say than he was legally allowed to say. And you heard him a couple times defer to if there's a skiff and if you have authorities, like I have more to say. He also made a comment that, if you want to know the answer to that, ask Arrow, meaning they've done a full intake and at a classified level, they have the information the public wants to know on Dylan Borland's, what I would assume is, direct knowledge of the legacy UFO program and the crash retrieval program. Just going to say it right there. But people are going to hear more from Dylan Borland right here on Weaponized. And I'm thinking probably, if we're lucky, it'll start next week.
I know what I testify to dramatically changes not just America, but humanity instantly.
Really? Thanks for keeping me in that loop. I had no idea. We got some good stuff coming. Again, thank you to the committee members, Representative Luna, and the names you mentioned for having us there and being such gracious hosts and doing such a good job to prepare for that hearing. They're pissed off. They're angry about being left in the dark, and they should be. It's time to break this stuff out. And there's got to be a structure where you can have some kind of disclosure, although how likely I think that's going to be, some kind of a disclosure that will not endanger national security, that will at least allow the public to know there really is something to this, and perhaps that could, generate some energy and interest among the scientific community that has always been deterred because of the stigma. I think if that is an outgrowth of that hearing and hearings to come, that's a really big step in the right direction.
Inch by inch, life's a cinch, baby. We made a huge historic moment, and let's see where it goes from here. But thanks so much, George, for reporting on Weaponized. I appreciate it, man.
And thank you for putting this all together. People have no idea what went into this and how much work and time and energy it went into. It wouldn't have happened without what you did.
Thanks, man. I'll see you next time.